Mark always begins with the musical score, and he always continues with the score of music in his hands. The dancing and the choreography is deeply connected to the music. It's a very musical show. The music is always live. So we have a pianist, we have a violinist on the stage with us. And when we perform, I think the audience will see the music illuminated through our dancing. Sometimes people say they see the musical notes on the stage in our bodies. So it's a very beautiful musical experience.
People sometimes use the term music visualization as an insult, that's a less sophisticated approach to choreography. And I find that funny, and I've seen Mark also find that funny, because it is also a very powerful reaction that you usually get from an audience seeing a dance that just seems to mesh with the music, and they both seem to come from the same impulse.
I was in the original cast of Candleflower Dance. This dance was dedicated to Susan Sontag, who is no longer alive. She was a prolific writer and a dear friend of Mark's and a fan of the company. It takes place inside of a small square. And most of the dancing only happens inside. Occasionally we stand on the outside or we jump out of the square. It's a restriction that Mark created for himself.
Both Italian Concerto and Candleflower Dance are for solo piano. The pieces for solo piano are also for a smaller group of dancers. Italian Concerto uses 5 dancers, Candleflower Dance uses 6 dancers. And with Italian Concerto, each of the movements, the first and the third, is for a duet, and the second movement is actually for a solo, which Mark premiered. That was the last piece that he was in the premiere in 2007. It's definitely more intimate, and there's a little bit more involvement between the smaller groups and the solo musicians. The musicians will rehearse separately. We rehearsed on our own, and then we will rehearse with Mark alone, and that's when he'll give us some of his thoughts about our interpretation, and we'll come together on how we're going to play it and to have a unified interpretation. Then we'll rehearse it with the dancers. And then we're ready to go. The music ensemble is a group of musicians, most of whom are based in New York City, that are freelance musicians that regularly work with Mark. The biggest challenge with working with dancers is who to follow. Are they following us, or are we following them? And the challenge is to not have that happen. The challenge is to not have anybody follow anybody, but for us to truly collaborate and for us all to be leaders, and we begin and end at the same place.
and Henry Cowell, this wonderful suite for violin and piano that Jen and Spencer is set to. The violin part is a quasi-Baroque suite, and the language really reflects Bach, which of course is one of Mark's great musical inspirations, but is, when you put it together with the piano part, piano has many kind of clusters where he uses his whole arm to create, waves of sound, and it's not Baroque at all. So it's this very interesting combination of modernist and Baroque style. Cowell uses different rhythms that don't quite fit into the normal scheme of the dance. When I play them on the violin, I'm supposed to kind of hover above the texture, fitting 7 notes where there would normally be 4, for instance. It becomes suddenly unmoored in this very touching and emotional kind of way. It sort of takes your breath like this.
Grand Duo is a piece for violin and piano, hence duo, by Lou Harrison. It's often been described as a primitive style dance based on some of the movements, but that comes from, I think, the score. The score itself could also be described as primitive. 2 of the movements use what's called a cluster bar or an octave banger, which is a piece of wood which is the exact width of an octave. So when you use the bar, it plays all of the notes within an octave, either on the white keys or the black keys. It has incredible beauty and incredible geometry. There's a lot of shapes, especially in the latter 2 movements. The first movement of Grand Duo is both musically very free and also choreographically very free. It basically repeats itself, and the second time through, the dancers have, it's an organized improvisation. They pair off into their own duos and follow each other and do a mirror improvisation. Mark always chooses the music. He probably knows more music than any musician I've ever met. He knows composers that I've never even heard of and knows details about pieces that I learn from all the time. I've said before, regardless of his work in the dance field, he's one of the most accomplished musicians I've ever been around.